Namo John de Jen Jamon Revo do Su Dembo de Washi Bon Juden Jubu Kolo Jo no no Bo no no Dembo Sanje John de Bejo Jo Do Bo no Shao Jodo Jo So Je Wo Kong Zhe Ko Ni Su Jodo Sa Jian De No Gong Bo De Bo Ma Nian Jie Den De No Zhu Jie Su De Zhe Ge Bo Zhu Xiao Zhe Na Da Gong Zhu Du Zhu Song Wu Yu Xie Zhang Zhu Si Zhe Da Bo Jie Den Su No Long Ge Wo Gong Bo Chu Ni Zhe Lo Jiang Zhe 千秋颠簸之名，道月照，千多照我就照在。列着今朝四宝送往节，两面青天就那照在。广播突厥接颠簸，道界金别颠簸。色那应天将作节，列见现那照在。大边的桥之环境，月月明松的着，几多的东求着不，亲着就那相在。这年这月朗阳的，老爸到那说的，先给到不应的的，跟着朗阳相在。六八金阳木家心，给我的送错吧。让月三年用所的，天天上街颠簸。高毛热热莫面东，就莫生活就不。没浪落到真道不，都是就能得到。三浪的月到节日报也，国光到年卷卷着的。我到那到七月老主人，随便做了着我哟。
Thus I've heard. At one time, the Blessed One was dwelling in the royal domain of Vulture Peak Mountain with a great gathering of monks and a great assembly of bodhisattvas. At that time, the Blessed One was absorbed in the samadhi of the many aspects of phenomena called profound appearance. At the same time, noble Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva Mahasattva, looking at the practice of the profound perfection of wisdom, saw the five skandhas in their natural emptiness. Then, through the power of the Buddha, the Venerable Shariputra said to the noble Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva Mahasattva, how should a son of the lineage train who wishes to follow the practice of the profound perfection of wisdom? Thus he spoke, and the noble Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva Mahasattva answered the Venerable Shariputra with these words. Shariputra, those men and women of the lineage who wish to follow the practice of the profound perfection of wisdom should look at it like this. The five skandhas should be seen purely in their natural emptiness. Form is empty, emptiness is form. Emptiness is not other than form. Form also is not other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, recognition, compositional factors, and consciousness are empty. Shariputra, like this, all phenomena are emptiness, and having no characteristics, they are unborn and unceasing. They are not impure or pure. They neither decrease nor increase. Therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness there is no form, no feeling, no recognition, no compositional factors, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no appearance, no sound, no smell, no taste, no sensation, no phenomena. There is no quality of sight and so on until no quality of mind and no quality of mental consciousness. There is no ignorance and no exhaustion of ignorance and so on up to no old age and death and no exhaustion of old age and death. In the same way, there is no suffering, no origin, no ending, and no path. No wisdom, no attainment, and no non-attainment. Therefore, Shariputra, since there is no attainment, bodhisattvas rely on and abide by means of the profound perfection of wisdom. And since their minds have no obscurations, they have no fear. Transcending falsity, they attain nirvana. All the Buddhas who dwell in the three times have relied upon the perfection of wisdom and have become true and complete Buddhas of unsurpassable, perfect, and complete enlightenment. Therefore, the mantra of the profound perfection of wisdom, the mantra of insight, the unsurpassed mantra, the unequaled mantra, the mantra which calms all suffering should be known as truth, for it is not deceptive. The mantra of the perfection of wisdom is proclaimed. Teata om gate gate paragate parasamgate bodhi soha. Shariputra, this is how a bodhisattva mahasattva should train in the profound perfection of wisdom. And the Blessed One arose from that samadhi and said to the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, noble Avalokiteshvara, that he had spoken well. Well done, O son of the lineage, it is so. O son of the lineage, since it is just so, the profound perfection of wisdom should be practiced just as you have taught, and the Tathagatas will also rejoice. When the Blessed One had said this, the Venerable Sharadvati Putra and noble Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva Mahasattva and the entire gathering, as well as worldly beings, gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas, rejoiced and praised the words of the Blessed One.
Rozo kyuna buji dozi yena zhuji yang song. Rodo chi zhu nimu nimu le ji jia zhu zhi zi ji. Ma ri mi se dong ye nyu gu ji ni jun zi zhi zhi na. Dene do ji za ji do si yin din li zu jia zi zhu yu. 就着就当就念的，道理明显讲，养老的阿巴扎阿拉巴扎的阿拉巴扎的，这点就牵绕人生。 哪里的木面包上些年，高东的就雄鹿多不易，若着不变弄，热多若所以是求一就也没有人多。 桃园卓越热望公约松，毛里学校姐姐这边多，小姐做我的那所我的，多着全部的心多着长，就在的罗波东那罗。边疆周边波动我的上，娘嘞心罗就罗所我的，上波东面一年当着的，秋天的月的当这边的，西藏各桑的年四年波，了解识别就罗所我的。大愿月面兄弟路中东，大王赵宝这边可就见，上界公众跑跑有些数，三门大别进了所望的，协助当别中阿的上，高当天别明不中的见。念就那些过去送了书，高东那么弄了所我的，刚进心的自己做个梦，我到这边我修接走的，到我那边到我开着的，要是就把接了所我的。赵宗跟的老妈多结账，刚老刚的些年最多年，就当天梦我住走在赚钱老妈弄了送我的，让我送着跟了导演。给上淘宝这边用我中，在人这边他给在包里，正在些年当了说我的，叫我更多养到那么多，这边就这边了弄些钱，啥当啷就有点少做的。多久强给我，人多有三界就当做，就能了想就不多多年就做，老给自己这边做那件，到了平时上街如果就上街。就当做的就能了，想就不多多年就做。大概这边错那的，到了平时上街如果就上街就做的就能了，想就不多多年就做。大概这边错那的。到了平时上街如果就，哎呀，哎呀，当时他们跟我讲是，他自己查钱那个钱嘛不要钱，啊你让给人家那看电影了，你点不图标不，那你我呢去写几的也能不要钱，你掉了你录到通面老师毕业，你那么几把钱，你他确定我是什么保险，你讲我那么中华保险保险呢，他不要讲钱就钱，给了你的就不当吧，那随便你让给直接在那么。那人家那好了，让了几线的学员什么，你没把几钱。
Let's begin with cultivating appropriate motivations as usual while visualizing Buddha Shakyamuni before oneself in the space surrounded by all those great lineage gurus such as great Indian masters of Nagarjuna, Asanga, as well as the great Tibetan masters, including Lama Tsongkhapa, and all those great masters, the lineage gurus and the masters, and one's own root gurus.
아니 타고도 어쨌든 대선 대세기 부수도 와서는 차와래다 뭐네 저는 부수 형을 차비서지 그래서 강간량도 상당하다 강간 저번에 수도 지방인 바데 내년에 학원에 차서 이제도 강간 미에 지바다 아니 다 가서 거에 이제 대바 중에지 대화된 바데 가서 뭐에 내서 시와 인자네 아니 지 뒤지다 아니 가서게 아니 땐데 대화 주에 아니 하선지라 냥도 쇼야서나 니 몇번 제시하나요 지 반히지기 소소야지 소원을 증거 지체 먹어야지 아니 강간량도 인비기 천상의 지체샤는 나라 슈처를 용사로
So in their presence, being yourself surrounded by all sentient beings, as who do not wish to experience sufferings and desire for overcome sufferings and so on. So now here, at this point, in this particular time, we all witnesses that if you look at the sentient beings, the human beings in particular, if you look at the situation right now, the experience that we are going through in the view of this pandemic, which is clear evidence that the world's, regardless of what part of the world that you live in, it is clear evidence that we are all connected and a similar wish to achieve happiness and overcome sufferings. This is, proved by this pandemic at this point of time. So by understanding such situations, it is a wonderful time for us to really have a compassion for all sentient beings and imagining that being yourself in their presence of all those great beings, surrounded by all other sentient beings who wish to overcome suffering and achieve happiness.
드리치마도 소소를 해지기 전화 여행이 소소 지부 지고 산업 동대에 농촌인데 세부 세자 차이도 맞소 이제다 봐요시다 맞소 대형할 때는 초도에 세부 세자 단 대형할 초고에나 대형할 전에 때는 좋고 돼요 달로 세부 세자 차소 사회 통해의 관여의 용수 조어데 전문인데 땡제 잡아지 이거는 대대가 세부 세자 차이인데 소소 지고기 대화 주는 로야서지다 콘셔스 개개 매버지
So it is not just religious belief of thinking about all other sentient beings, having a view of interdependence is not something that is exclusive to religious idea, nor it is some kind of dogma or ideology. Rather, it is fact. It is a fact that we are all connected to each other. This is a proof, a positive proof of how we are interrelated. So this, which is proof by the situation that we have right now. So here now, if you look at ourselves and just thinking about now, when understanding such situations, we now clearly know that just focusing on one's own happiness is completely not right. It is not a right way of, pursuit of one's own happiness, because we as sentient beings, particularly human beings, we are relying upon where our day-to-day survival is based on reliance of 5 desire objects. In order to acquire such 5 desire objects, we can't acquire such objects, 5 desire objects, independently, but depending upon other beings. So therefore, we are all interconnected. The idea of interconnectedness should be present in our, stream of being. It's very quintessential.
이제는 아주 최초로 상추 센스는 생자치가 센 로버에마도 아니 영수조벌에 찬양 따고에 근데 한다 지송이 봐 그래서 진짜 근데 때뭐 되니라 아니 손이 참말라 되네 가서 손보보데 참마 때고 있잖아요 무슨 되는 so ta sing de da la song chema yin za ne song bo de la chema da ne ga wa da de ba che 아니 생 자체가 생인데 소소기 오늘 그거 라나 때는 예와 있잖아요. 그 마도는 더 이제 매와 있잖아요. 된저기 아니 생바 자체 뭐 제거다. 아니 되는 쉬고는 가와다 대바제 봐서야 돼. 진짜다 대바래도 와.
So therefore, in the teachings that we find the cultivation of bodhicitta. The cultivation of bodhicitta simply means the broadening one's mind and freeing one's mind from the bondage that we are always, as we always. So it is the freeing one's mind from bondage and broadening one's mind is all about the cultivation of bodhicitta. So therefore, by understanding this, the cultivation of bodhicitta is not something that is a religious idea. It is a fact which enables one to achieve happiness for oneself and that of other sentient beings. So therefore, the great masters who have taught such teachings, who have given us such a wonderful instructions, and their teachings are so authentic. By looking at the authenticity of their teachings, we will naturally, generate irreversible faith and appreciation towards them.
다 된저기 대바다 니제 용비 된다라. 근데 그만 니에스 좀 해봐셔야겠다.
With these motivations of having cultivating faith and generating compassion towards all other sentient beings, let's take a couple of minutes to meditate.
아니 된저기 끊어 집어지잖아요. 건센바세 주. 다 대바체 비추스 말이야. 아니 샤조 란저림 봐. 샹추스네 아니 조비 산제지 코포나자. 텔라 주비 네 란저림 봐. 시제마로가 덤비. 네 샹추 란리 쳔모 세다니 셰용스 잡아 되니. 내가 주체버셔 고스보원이 전에네. 신경의 친연인가 지금은 가시 조심이 아니 친연 제지.
So with these motivations, and the teaching that we are receiving is the Mahayana teachings, or the Jiangsu Lam Rimpa, the great deities on the stages of the path to enlightenment, the complete state of enlightenment. And so therefore, one must listen, the listeners must listen to these teachings very delightfully, as well as the teacher who's actually giving the teaching must give the teachings delightfully as well.
다 된저기 네 송자 쳔보데 네 토마 맞아 나리 쳔보기 자이 사지 코로나도 왔다 뒤뒤 지시와야나 아니 토마 제법으로 템버 투비 엄보 투비 엄베 동보 장주주도 되는 바도 초사 아니 다 아니 뭐도 집에 냥냥이 도는 송비 아니 송바보 담바 투병 뭔가 저기 다 자이 기겐스 되어.
So this is a teaching, such a precious teachings. It's actually given by the Buddha Shakyamuni, the great teacher who generated bodhicitta, engaged in the practice of accumulating merits for 3 countless years, and finally experienced all those realities and gained those realizations, and whatever the experiences and realization that he himself has experienced was then written into a text and transmitted to his followers, such as ourselves.
당가 저게지 로지선나 달하이 된제 네 계시생에나 아니 소모다이지게는 잡아요. 네 냐나 가서 아니 자체주비지게는 저전 자와 상방고 아니 냐네 신로지잖아요. 네 배상나도제 선에요. 용다이제 그래서 송고보대 네 주바송게 네 자이 콘도산데 송도.
So now those lineage masters, including the masters who are in the form of Sambhogakaya, we primarily find that there are 3 categories of those masters. The great masters of the lineage masters of the vast, extensive deeds, and the lineage masters of profound deeds, and lineage masters of the practice, the blessed practices. So lineage masters of the profound deeds are referring, profound views are referring to Manjushri and his followers, and lineage masters of the vast deeds are, referring to the Maitreya Buddha, and the lineage masters of the blessed practice are referring to Chana Dorji or the Vajrapani. So those are the 3 main, you could call as deities. Louder,
아니 레송고볼은 너도 레송고보 전에 신뢰지로
이게 도시하면
레송고볼은 좀 당연 단지 레송고
나오는 게 쉬면다.
안다다래
네 말라고.
되지. 다 되네 마시 왜 되네. 가서 저런 뭐 저기 라미 트인지 통해서 다기 중에 소토세네. 라미 트인라 통하는 게 딱 강주게 세레 오미토나 따이기 쉬어봐대. 선바 놀러라 강행도 제베거라 라미 젠토마데네 달라 녜소에 아니 르레 차소소에 아니 르르다 아니 다 된저게요 자체쇼비제네 자체쇼지는 시소나 아니 조지네 세네레 제스 쇼라네 세네레 아니 소모다이지네 시나 바데 나와다도 고물르다 아니 저르모체게네 자가 펜들을 미세게 아니 된 손샤도 여러.
So therefore it is due to those the kindness of those lineage gurus, the lineage gurus of the vast, profound deeds, also the profound views and vast practice, and then the blessed practice. It is due to their kindness. We are able to follow their immaculate teachings. So therefore, Lama Tsongkhapa has stated that it is due to the kindness of my gurus. It is due to the kindness of my gurus. Thus, I'm able to rest my mind. I'm getting a wonderful rest in my mind. It eases my mind. So therefore, this is how Lama Tsongkhapa actually have a irreversible faith in those lineage gurus of.
되네. 답에 건재전에는 정말로 정말 친구. 되네서 랑게 되게 사이바네. 뭐네 투지 가사다. Tosan goso yama dewa nyangsa lene ta ngwe ton densi ki ton sere ngoso ki ngune je yenge gene sai lame ba je ma che chongsha nge gene lama na ngoso se je zhi yo na ye yo de ba.
So this is the teaching that we are following. The teaching that has been taught by the great masters to their disciples, to their followers, and gone through the the practice, listening to gone through the practice of listening to the teachings, contemplations, and meditations. So such teachings that we are following is amazingly and fortunate for all of us.
Ne lama tsa chambo yin se ne chi ngone tong tang so chi ma yin ba. Ne lama te da ge song os je yo an sa ne. Ne je te ge ne jong te da ge ne je ja ka da sa na ne sa ba da ja cha wa. Ne jin zin ni je ne ne bo te yin ge. Ne te ge ne jong zo mo de yo yin sa ne chi chi cha wa da cha ro do.
So here now, it is not just we are blindly saying those teachings are very precious and authentic teachings, nor we are blindly saying that the authors are, or the teachers who taught those teachings are, authentic and they are valid teachings. But rather, if you really look at their teachings, the teachings of views, the profound views, and the vast deeds of their teachings. It really, if you really look at the teachings and analyze very carefully, you'll be able to find how those teachings really help us to eradicate our grasping at self and self-cherishing mind. So this is really proof how their teachings are authentic, how the teacher who taught those teachings are authentic.
Ne ne she chata sha wa se nge de an ji kansa shen da chi ge le ka cha wa ma yin ba. Ne to bo rang ji le ji bi de da yin sa ne. Ne de la da sa si ka bo ma so wa che ne. Ne mo ne se ji dan je bi to ne chen ye cha wa yin na. Da ma zu gi to bo rang ji le je la. Ne shin de ne pen do chen bo. Di de da la ki lo jo ge de. Ra shen yin ga la. Ni je se yo yin chi.
So cultivating appropriate motivation is something that is very, very important because it is, not just you're attending some lecture and someone else's speech, but rather we are in taking our time to listen to the teachings. Whatever the teaching that we have received, we should be implemented, and we should actually bring those teachings on the emotional level, and make a change of one's own mind.
Da damba ngun ji da damba ngun ji la ma che te te yi ba za yi sa ji je ne za yi sa ji ji ba de ji ne ji ba de la ni yong yi mo yi zuo ro da de lang ji za wa xian ni den bi de da den lo ji da xiang yi ba ni ji o de ji song xia le ji.
So with this, we have actually covered the first outlines, and the second outline is showing the greatness of the teachings in order to engender respect for the teachings, which will then be followed by the relying on the teacher is the root of spiritual path, and how to train our mind, having relied upon the spiritual masters.
Da sa ji ni ba che lang ji za wa xian ni den bi de da den lo ji da xiang yi ba ni ji da dong bo ji sa. Da den lo ji da xiang yi ba la ni de yi den la ni bo len bi shi gu wa dang ni bo ji da len bi chu ni ji da dong bo ji sa. Da ni bo ji da len bi chu de la yang ni ji lang ji na ji la ni ba ji da ni bo len ji mo ji da dong bo ji sa. Da ni bo len ji ngo de la song ju bu chung gen da ti mo yang ji ren ba nyang sa ni ji ju bu ren da ti mo yang ji ren ba nyang sa ni ji ju bu chen bi lang ji ren ba nyang sa ni ji da dong bo ni ji sa. Da ju bu chen bi lang ji ren ba nyang sa ni ji la za yi sa ji song te chen lang ju bu bo dang ba sen ji ko na den ba sen de ji da ji bi chu sen ji ne xue ba la lo ci ye ji da dong bo ni ji sa. Da sen ji ne xue ba la lo ci de la song ji sen ji ne lo ba la lo gu bi jin sen lo ba re re wa la lo ba sang ji men ju ba ba lo ba la lo bi ren ba ni xie ba ji. Da dong bo ni ji sa da lo ba la lo bi ren ba ni xie ba de la ni 아니 태바 첨부 줄라로 제도 체바도 상 도제 태바로 제지 다 동보지사 이마마데 다 동보라니 상세절로발로 노대정 전에 저세 동보송 손에 제달로 비추 아 동보니 지사 다 손에 제달로 비추들라니 아마데 손에 제달로 비추다는 송제 강라로 비제 델로바나 비추 델로로 비림바오 다 동보니 지사 다 델로로 비림바들 야니레 나 쇼바 줄라로 제다 제바다 파샤 타마니라 로체레 다 동보라 사제 니르 랑게 산제지 주메바시바 바로도 심바다 신지 주메바시바 대용보자라 로체레 다 동보라 주데 심발로 주주연로체 아 조발로체 젠줄로체 삼텐로체 셔랄로체 다 대인에게는 동보심발로체 차네 아니바 아니 주전전로 로체제 당아서 제세제 나바존에 제세제 쇼바 이동하나 하고 로바 바로 대신 바 줄로체 노예니 지미 파신데 차네 아니 주전제 파신라 로체 되거나 사제라 거스 보여레스.
So we're in the particular chapter, the chapter 11, and under the discussions of how to practice the perfection of ethical disciplines, which is the part of Bodhisattva's practice.
되지. 다들 너희 가서 추천지 파신 게 뭐하시 받아. 아니 저당 추천되라 소예변원에 다다 카투 거스 법받라. 아니 동비 추천된 문제 제거래스. 동비 추천되라 계셔시와이나 아니 매개 주봉이 추천 교로대 제비고는 시는 매개 주봉이 추천 세거래다. 아니 무슨 문제 제서들 반딩 거 링하이 dembote pambi ani pansen chela chuchen segre sondwa.
So although there are three different kinds of the practice of ethical discipline, at this point we're dealing with the first ethical discipline, which is abstention from misdeeds. So when it comes to the abstentions from misdeeds, there are primarily of 10 of them, if you include the motivations. But at this point, at this particular, currently, we're more, it's more, emphasizing on the 7 misdeeds, abstention from 7 misdeeds, 3 bodily, the misdeeds, bodily misdeeds, and the 4, negative deeds of the speech.
맞아요. 저도 가서 되지 엄마 줘봤어요. 뭐도 전에 추천례지 메시지. 뭐도 하도 매일 공부 간지 타고는 시대에서도 추천례잖아. 타제도 공부하래.
So ethical discipline, the practice of ethical discipline is something very, very important because it is a foundation for the development of all other practices and development of spiritual realization. So therefore, it says, we find it at Madhyamaka Avatara, where it says, there's no other causes for giving rise to a higher rebirth, other than ethical disciplines. Ethical discipline really becomes the actual cause for giving rise to higher rebirth.
다때 조가서 문제 제서때 뒤중가서게 매겨와 줬는데 매겨 주봉이 추천된 문제 시작체. 아니 매겨 주봉이 추천될 이지미지 게츠노기 담바된 거 계속게 말와. 매겨 주봉이 추천성에 제나 아니 저와시마라에 모두 하면 거 못하 그래. 세대. 네. Thank you much.
So when speaking about the 10 vows or the 10 non-virtues, abstention from 10 non-virtues, we're not talking about those vows should be observed only by the monastic members, the members, or the ordained or the novice members, but rather this is required for all of us, because if one is able to observe such 10 vows, observe those such 10 vows, and able to abstention from such 10 negative deeds, then we're actually accumulating a cause that gives rise to the high rebirth, such as rebirth in human and deva, or the demigods.
얘는 가서 본디 코제스도 소타지 담바기 단다 추춘 좋은 문제서때 니지 미지 랭하게 되고 얘네 저다 저발에 도바대야 랭하래 수천에 되었을 조 산적이 제반 제사대 류도 마기 제반 제마도 이지 송보들 메시지 제반 제마리 이들 신도는 카보로와 이지 산치세.
So here, especially when speaking about Sotargidomba, which is the Pratimoksha, or this individual liberations, the vows of the individual liberations, it is mostly to do with the individual vows of the individual liberation is mostly to do with the deeds of body and speech. It's not really, emphasizing, more on the motivations.
Tinoge mege chupong ye leje lang de yawa shese de ton karsana yiji sombo de ene lunga ye gotyen ye kyuno chenge de res de kol leje lang yin jang le ma yin sala gore yiji sombo de.
So therefore, it says that last three missed, non-virtues of the minds are said to be not actually, although it is a path of the negative deeds, but they are not actually a karma or the lay. It's not actually a karma, but they are the the driving force for one's karma. So karma or lay is here, and in this particular context, really referring to the karma to do with our bodily actions, body and speech, the actions of the body and speech.
Ta kasi de tama de nge ya san ro ji lo we da to chenye de ya pang de ko je chenye pang de je chenye je yin no chue sombo de ma cha ba da xia da me ba yang da be da wa ne de da gyun ne long je yin de de yi xie re gyun ne long wa xie ba da jie bi chu zhen zhong wang de xian ne le je lang ju na ba xie do da ge yi pang bi chu zhen xie we de ani me ge wa ji ge lo xue de la na se ne se lo da song de la ani ma cha ba da xia da me ba da ani yang da be da wa sombo de cha ro ko sombo de la ge wa xue ne xie na gyun lo re me ge xue xie na gyun lo re.
That's it. 이게 간 팬베르 뭐지?
야스 때 저로 뒤치디 때서 가서 내가 돈 벌는 게 봐도 왜 지지로.
맞아. 간 말이시 좀 챙게 절로는 게
대야 본데 이제 생일 진행 나와서야지. 다 추송부 대세디 단지
굴론다 제베 이게나 대야 굴론다 제베 원도 전에 쓰왜. 이 말봐. 예, 좋아.
그런 지금 온도 시나 미게 데려오니.
맞어.
또 대야 본데 이제 생일 진행 나와지.
맞어.
다 되는 추송부 그래서 가지 저도 민주 대례되어 선수. 야이. this tema me juba de chelo de ne de de china ro chita.
So we are going back a little bit, although we have gone through that, which I think is important to read once again. It is the same paragraph for the half. If you look at the sixth line, it says the paragraph, the third paragraph of the sixth line, which is moreover, in terms that includes motivation. It is the 10 abstentions that eliminate the 10 non-virtues. And in terms of what is, in terms of what it really is, it is 7 abstentions. So very clear, it's 7 abstentions, which are the nature of the actions of the body and speech that abstain from the 7 non-virtues.
대체 되레 량랑 주세 de ge sho ne 량랑 주 mo ji jia da ni me ge wa sho ne ni 량랑 ju mo ji jia de ji ba che.
So, when it comes to the non-virtues, of course, we have certainly have 10 non-virtues, and then also the 10 virtues, which is opposite of those 10 non-virtues, will be the 10 virtues.
대체 다 니바 되레 예 추진 정어 게 강발은 주비 터서 다 하나 추진 양서 랭고에 네 추진 될로 강대 진양 내고 당 소식이에 강이 버텔라 아니 강은 양에 제데 고 생주에 루비 천절라 강는 양에 제고에 지지로와 현재는 대다 강발은 주비 터서 되 니바 되레 사지. 파쇼드네 세전용어 대 강발은 주비 타우스데 네 세전지 파신 냥스 렘발라니 강나 아니 강에 좋아데 가리잖아요 요거를 세대래다.
So how to here now how do we actually begin with engaging in the practice of ethical disciplines? How do we actually cultivate the enthusiasm for meditating on the practice of ethical discipline?
안테 달로 간데 진례에나 그 강저 세딩아 저기 지 변나 동반이지 강 세디 미빠질샤네 유되니라 아니 미데 시네 지 매바 소리지 가제 미데기 transition에 대해 진짜라 돈이 가서 보라 쉐비잖아 강에도 로데랑 롱월에 제네 강 미기 수어 따와다 많이 봐 로이 니지에는 니지 원래지 수준에는 로데 수준이 원래지나 강 양선에 보라.
So now here, when speaking about meditating on practicing or meditating on ethical discipline, it's something different from the meditating on emptiness, right? So here now, when speaking about meditating on emptiness, there's involvement of subject and object. Subject being one's mind, which actually is focusing on meditating, our meditative equipoise, and an object being emptiness. So there's involvement of subject and object. But when it comes to the meditating on ethical disciplines, there's no involvement of subject and object, rather only subject. You are trying to transform the way of your thinking and replacing the positive thought in the place of this negative thoughts by eradicating those negative thoughts and replacing that positive thought within oneself. In other words, we're just trying to generate a positive thought within stream of being, within one's own continuum.
텔라 타티카리 제거세디 카디나 다레 쮸기 차네 아니 쮸 통네 아니 제니 면도기 제다 연대 통네 강아슈신 주 통에 제데 슈비잖아 강저기 타티 연하면나 데.
So this is how we should prepare ourselves, try to find a faults in not observing ethical disciplines, and try to find advantages, the side of advantage, or think about the positive side of observing ethical disciplines. So once you're able to find a fault, and you naturally will not willing to engage in such actions which is negative. And if you find something that is so positive, will naturally enables you to have an enthusiasm of engaging in positive deeds, and by seeing the good qualities of observing ethical discipline.
대다 세제네 쇼발로 로바 켈랑바 데네 신제다지 조베 상제지 추준제 젠다데버 주바 켈랑바 인베 데유데루 고라 대양 모더 장게 추준 용서 다바 다비 도지 고데 송
하면도 좀 서름시 가지 많이 디바돌레스 죽델레 죽델레
데레가 내가 야치 로이다
니 많이
내가 이게 내가 롱데 차소였다 내가 야로이다 되지가니 좀 줄로셔
라서
가서 제제 본데 이제 중del레 내가 녀모바 단도 메네비 셰당 디바 민중이 셰르 생라 이자비 메시베 스티와 니지 셰르 여마리 니지 셰랑 데이주 임바 니지 담바다게 템바샤와 니 임비 셰나 수트인데 대양 뽕원된지 천이제노 추송보 만차바다 셰다메바 양답에 따오네 대규네 넘바시바 인데 이 시를 규내 항원 시바당 집이 추진정원의 시에는 레절랑 넘버 주시에도 시에서 손도 놀죠.
So Chandrakurti's explanation of the middle way, the commentary on Madhyamaka, Madhyamaka which says it is called ethical discipline because it does not acquiesce in the afflictions, because it allows no sins to arise, because it is coolness, since it cools the fire of fire of regret, or because it is that upon which the excellent rely, since it is the cause of happiness. Moreover, it is characterized by 7 extensions. These are motivated by the 3 qualities: non-attachment, non-hostility, and correct view. Therefore, ethical discipline is explained as the 10 paths of actions in terms that include motivation.
대체 이거는 게 대체 대수 제대로 하셔. 이런 아니 대 제가 추천이 연대做的 진별론시 tin지 대서로 추천의 소용이 추천 대기 강을 송사대 녀모라바 인자네 코유 도셔될 대화래 그래. 인전 추천의 녀모버 카데잡이 대화당 아니 녀모베 차동습이 나유에서는 배작을 해라다. 시비마 대화이죠.
So ethical discipline is as ethical discipline, or the practice of perfection of ethical discipline, serve as a direct antidote towards the gross level of defilements, because it is a direct antidote of the gross level of defilements. By applying antidote towards those gross level of defilements, as a result, one will be able to gain happiness. So therefore, practice of generosity, as a result of practice of generosity, one will have abundance resources, and practice of ethical discipline will give rise to happiness.
지단대로 컨트롤해서나 미치보면 세보세장로 컨트롤할 때 저당 저버세나리 샴바리 그 송에데 송이 고차라고 때 수트로 고차 때게 내 통해도 저바로 인선에 수트의 샴비기 장신데 인선에 시비 장신.
It is we have a saying that the coolness and the ethical discipline, which actually cools our negative thoughts such as anger, hatred, and so on, because it is clear that when someone is angry, and that individual who is angry at the point is not happy at all, unhappy person, right? Someone who is angry whoever is angry is not a happy person. So therefore, the direct attitude towards this anger is actually a practice of love, the practice of loving kindness. But then loving kindness must be built upon this ethical discipline, the perfection of ethical discipline.
당연히 되게 저는 진조사마 당연히 원이바도 로기다 니바네제 대다 센제네 쇼바 쇼바로 로바 켈랑바 데네 센제도지 조베 상제지 추진지 제다데버 조바 켈랑바 인베 데데주 거라 대양모도 랑게 추진 용스 다비 다지 거데 송도.
So now, next, we are reading through the text, how to begin with the cultivation of ethical discipline. As a person who generates the spirit of enlightenment and then promise to train in the Bodhisattva's deeds, you have promised to endow all living beings with the ornament of the ethical discipline of the perfect Buddhas. Therefore, you must accomplish the aims of all beings. In this regard, you must first develop the strength of your own pure ethical discipline. For it, your own ethical discipline is impure and degenerate. You'll fall to the miserable realms, miserable rebirths, and will therefore not even achieve your own welfare, never mind the welfare of others.
되게 제세를 가서 상주 선배 상주기 생제의 생제반의 전에 전이 되는 거 진짜시 뭐지 나 전주 되는 거 맞지 아니 선제 단지 내윤저도 이거야나 다티 가르쳐 버렸잖아 아니 상주宣传 이용이 쇼바될 로네 선제 단지 추천지 제다 되버지 제보의 캘렌서로 와서 인산에 제 추천기 제 요발라 라니 추천기 제다 되버지 거래에 손한테
So here it says now it's clearly mentioned that the promise to attain in the bodhisattva states, you have promised to endow all living beings with the ornament of ethical disciplines of the perfect Buddhas. So therefore, you must accomplish the aim of all beings. In this regard, you must first develop a strength of your own pure ethical disciplines. So therefore, without having observing or practicing and purity of one's own ethical discipline, it's simply not be able to establish other sentient beings to the practice of ethical discipline.
다 동보대 추천된 게 받아 양슬랭 그 비전세 되게 지시 아니 뒤제라 아니 추천 마소나 니데 소나 페데여서 아니 로인 주른도
So
비다 주지
yes, Rinpoche. Rinpoche.
로 땡가
예, 그건 맞대.
추천 양슬랭 야야 배경에 되는 또 많이 단단 되게 추천게 사제제도 지도 사제사나 용이만 저희 저희들 거라 렘보 수준도 동보 추천에 받은 양선에 그거로 처랑이 되는 캔에 제송한다고 지켜지지
냠냠 제 고비.
냐네 제고비 제세듯이
맞아.
아니 냐네 제고비 제세시에 제서 아니 다 냐네 제당도서래 아니 계속만 세대 개체되지 조비거라 내세니 받달라 아니 추천 양선 만에나 전대열에 추천 양선에 손에 대화돼 So here,
it's the way the text actually presents these teachings in a very, sequential manner. It is a very, in other words, a sequential order. Because if you look at the text and it says the first talks about the reasons for why one should engage in the practice of ethical discipline. This will then be followed by, if this is the case, and how do we actually engage in the practice of ethical discipline? Which will then be followed by the two other things. And what is the disadvantages of not being able to engage in the practice of ethical discipline? What is the advantage of engaging in the practice of ethical discipline? Purposes now. So never mind the others. Never mind the welfare of others. Hence, once you begin working for the welfare of others, value highly your ethical discipline, right? And you need to sharply focus on safeguarding it and restraining your behaviors. Do not be lax. The compendium of perfection states.
따텔은 저시 자체부 기계적만 가서 저와시면 이제 다다길이 되나기 가지 밀리던 비서 소바지 만에나 소소기 다다 당가서 던돌이 지어지 전에는 이제 소소 거탕을 만들면 이제는 로봇적인 던돌세대 배치 세다 자제인 봐. 가세 로저전에 축하기게 로안던 저 취도에 차전지어만 신드는 가보러. 인산의 던돌기 지어대 수준 요소서 마다는 던돌기 지어지 연투 민도아.
So practice of ethical discipline is possible only if you take a rebirth in a high realms, high rebirth, in other words, like a human beings. Otherwise, without having such a, conducive rebirth, it is not possible for us to, engage in the practice of ethical discipline. Think about the animals. If you are taken a rebirth as animals, how can we relate to, we engage in the ethical discipline? How can that animal can work for the welfare of other beings? Of course, there are some animals which really helpful, such as service dog who actually helps the blind person to guide the blind person and so on and so forth. But this is very rare.
Thoma yonsi zhang, tsutrin tabi tuyi tab jamchi jedang, tsutrin nyambi rangden mindu na zhenden tsula tuyi kala song, deshi zhenden lepa tsumba yi dela zhendu leba riba min songda xie so song.
So then here it says that those who strive to enter all beings with the ornament of perfect Buddha's ethical discipline, initially purify their own ethical discipline. With pure ethical discipline, they develop powerful strength. And also, if you cannot achieve your own welfare with faulty ethical discipline, where will you get strength for the welfare of others? Therefore, those who strive for the others' welfare do not relax their devotion to this. Take a chance, right?
다단지 이게 가서 쇼로 가서 시제되게 된다데 창도 로차미 손 차서
No worries.
배전 로차이 된다 대가라인도 맞도 대가라 장대 다정니를 네바면은 현대 제기 터진데 매와 장니 네바 전부 차이에 맞아 제단에 코로 데려와 하버스 냐네기 리바데로와 당가 좀 남비 최대 데려와 가서 뒤중에서 남아서 손질라 제시랑지 체셔봤을 아니 파센트 가면으로 시에도 창설해 요야지 아니 라바서 가면으로 시 창설해 요야지 아 되네로 송 가면으로 시에도 창설해 요야지 야電子권의 시에도 창설해 요야데 그 랑지 전바디 지리마도 만다로서 매비 따래 아니 명수 줘봐대 아니 그 뒤사게 랑가치 인자네 버세질 버거비 되러와 텔레젠바치 추소나 랑가 베드 사바찬로 그러마도 아니 젠지 하나 지 농에 차로라.
So here in the teachings, so if we ourselves is not equipped with all those teachings, that you are not actually matured yourself by engaging in practices and particularly ethical disciplines, and suddenly there is no way that we can work for the welfare of other beings, period. So therefore, it is very important, first of all, to work for the welfare of other beings. One must mature oneself, in other words, one's practice, in terms of one's practice and so forth. So here, if you look at the teachings, and you will find that even though that one is focusing on one particular practice, such as practice of practice of perfection of giving, of perfection of generosity. But if you're able to train yourself and mature enough yourself, matured enough to practice such engage in such practice, you'll be able to within the practice of perfection of generosity can be condensed the perfection of entire perfections. In other words, entire perfections, 6 perfections. Similarly, if one is able to engage in one lapasum, the 3 high trainings, one of the 3 high trainings, one will be able to, able to encapsulate the 2 other high trainings. And also that if one is engaging in the practice of one dene and one baskets of the teachings, one of the baskets of the teachings, or one of the Tripitakas, you'll be able to condense and you'll be able to actually encapsulate, include the 2 other, the basket of the teachings as well. This is what is meant by one should have matured oneself to be able to work for the welfare of other sentient beings. So of course, we find, of course, there are 6 different kinds of practice, such as 6 perfections, 3 high trainings, 3 baskets, and so on and so forth. But then if someone who actually embodies the teachings of the Buddha, who is well practiced, then such an individual can, while focusing primarily on the first practice of 6 perfections, for instance, will be able to encapsulate, will be able to include other practices, other 5 remaining practices, along with the practice of generosity, so and so. So, so therefore, then again here, importance of someone who has not really matured enough, who have not really experienced much of those practice of the Dharma, then really needs introductions of the differences of the 6 perfections, 3 high trainings, and 3 baskets, and the subject matter of the 3 baskets, and the subject matter of the 3 high trainings, and so on. So for us as initial practitioners, we really need the divisions of all those practices. But only those who actually engage in the practice of meditations and they have reached the certain level of meditations or realizations, then for them, it doesn't really require those divisions. So this is how we find the examples in the teachings. The practice of Dharma, is analogous to a boat, where we can actually ride a boat, and the purpose of riding a boat is to get to the other shore of the ocean. So once you get to the other shore of the oceans, then the boat that you have ridden was very, very helpful. But once you get off the oceans, and then boat will be left behind. So you will be your destination. That's the destination that you have already accomplished your destinations. Similarly, when the practicing Dharma, you need all those practices, such as 6 perfections, 3 high trainings, 3 tripitaka, so on and so forth. It's like a boat until you gain the state of enlightenment. Once you are able to free yourself from the bondage, and those have been very helpful, but you don't need all those once you have gained the complete state of enlightenment.
Judo get nena jetta jeba ta la de lemba la ra leba le de song de bi lo shu da jin den bi jes shepe ma so yi ni mi dang so bi pyen rin do gang bi go ne son de jeba xiao bo ne de ni le song do.
So now here it says, moreover, such pure ethical discipline is based on the practice of just as prescribed of what to adopt and what to cast aside. So this moreover depends on the strong and the stable attitude of wanting to safeguard your ethical disciplines. Consequently, develop a desire to safeguard your ethical discipline by meditating for a long time on the grave consequence of not safeguarding it and benefits of safeguarding it.
Sibo se jangro chute yonso da mo da se de chute song ma song da gro chute song se de ni chute ge nyemi shebe to ne ka pe so be to ne la le de la ni ra le ba de sibo se jangro.
So now the purity of one's ethical discipline is it is purely depends upon how you safeguarded your ethical discipline, how you safeguard yourself from engaging in negative deeds. This is what is meant by the purity of ethical discipline.
Yala chute song be song de jeba la chute yin de dong bu chute yin de she go was en dong bo le chute yin de gar gar yo se de.
So therefore, it talks about if you to generate enthusiasm for engaging in the practice of enthusiasm for practicing ethical disciplines, one should know the qualities and the advantages of engaging in the practice of ethical discipline.
Bonne teni le de me se jipa thon sha shin pong ye chung yang nang ba pong wa ji xie ba da ni mi jin ji ne ka na ma to chung yang be be pong wa de su zhen ju me tin shu je ra shu me ge yu ji ni mi na ha xie sin ba da sang mo so de pian ne so.
So then here it says, with respect to the grave consequence of not safeguarding in your ethical discipline, the compendium of perfection says, therefore, see the unbearable fright and eliminate even the smallest things that should be eliminated. Thus, once you're frightened by the grave consequences of your misdeeds, you start to abstain from even the small ones. Think, as explained earlier, about the grave consequences of 10 non-virtues, crossed factors, incompatible with ethical discipline.
충산 시에 세고 제사 시에 세고이나 나가 속에 라쇼네 시에 소이나 아니 세대이 대지당 변은 나무지게 강에당 제하게 강에 진짜 연수 줘봐대 수준 마송이 제전에 강에데 최도 카나마토 중요 중요 방구를 써야 돼. 그 강에지면은 방구에 기네요. 강에 가르에 세지소나 아니 나무 진짜라 송센데면은 강에 돼요.
So here all the difficulties that we face, the chaoses in our life, the experiences of chaoses and experiences of all those undesirable events that we experience is all due to the lack of ethical disciplines, including the desirable experiences of the disaster experiences of of family level and the societal level as well as the global level are all due to the lack of this ethical disciplines.
오늘 때는 추천서는 차시의 대비권은 송생로 차시 대비권은 송생라 송생 캔에 요나 변의 대령안을 치도가 지지 넣어서나 인게들 레메죠 인게들 하랑이 네 샴비권에 아니 코로나기 때 크토와 제게에서 비게도 논주도 자가 말로 샴비권은 코크토와 제게에서나 추천이 파쇼될 가사 대체자로 소 파쇼보기 아니 컨트롤이나 가리에나 때 장신이 매고서셔야지.
So now this is how we should actually learn how to practice ethical disciplines. One should plan right from the beginning. We as ordinary beings, without planning, if we come across with someone who is offensive to oneself, then one will not be able to control oneself, and then we will, retaliate accordingly. But for us, what should we do is right from the beginning, we should plan ourselves that if I come across with someone who, who become offensive to myself, I must not react towards that, but rather I will look at this person, I will with loving kindness, and with this, not only that will beneficial for yourself, but also by not retaliating will not actually intensify the angers and hatreds of the other person. So in this way, it is not only that helpful for yourself, but you're also being able to help other beings.
당가서 오늘 저는 내가 손을 그거 쉬우지래. 배는 뽕 댕지로 치진대로 그래서 계산은 되는 매개지기 들어서도 배나 준 참아 시주 나체생이데 개체식이 돈은 뭘 내슈된 예나면에 들어와.
So those are the main negative deeds, the seven negative deeds which need to be, abandoned, or which need to be one need to abstention from. Those are the 7 negative deeds, particularly of the 4 negative deeds of the speech: lying, harsh words, covetousness, and slandering, and those gossipings. All of those are actually a very has this quality of dragging ourselves into undesirable situations. So therefore, those are by recognizing those, one should put in effort to refrain from such negative actions of speech.
나 이거는 되게 송상대 차지다 되면은 요나 몇대 세대 차비를 차고 말이 다 같이 터셔 좀 많이 봐. 상바다 제게는 하네 퍼지 되게 명보들이 같이 집어대라. 송생이 고쳐대요나. 몇대 문에
So this is how we should refrain ourselves from engaging in negative deeds of the speech, such as harsh words, slandering, and so on and so forth, right? And this should done only, which is all beneficial only if one's practice of abstention from such misdeeds is based on the cultivation of love and sense of caring and sense of connectedness with others.
아니 리주고는 소저바 아니 가서 마진바네 봐. 네 롱이 세로. 다 제왕 있잖아 롱이. 드르지게 메셔게 이제 차서나 오늘 롱바 코노노로 때 패체 때 그거 말이 된자 송저 폴리스던 그거 말이. 드르지게 팅송에 메지나.
Then think about the body reactions, the 3 negative body actions. If all individuals was voluntarily observe such ethical disciplines of not killing, not stealing, and not engaging in sexual misconduct and so forth, then it doesn't require even a security guards, or it doesn't require police who only look for a crime. So if you're able to really, voluntarily, if each and everyone voluntarily to be able to engage in such practice, or abstention from 3 negative deeds of the body.
이거는 쇼지 쇼능에게 좀 받을 된자문도 넣으러와. 대기 로셔되나 된자도로 그래. 수진 대화 수진 된바 대화생 그래. 수진 대위진로는 도스래.
So this is what is meant by, as a result of observing ethical disciplines will give rise to happiness. See, if the ethical discipline, if everyone is actually following and abstention from those negative deeds and observing ethical discipline, then happiness is always there.
인트리기 링아 댕보데 규마 동에게 연하면은 푼두게 나체 송보데 아니 데레 나센 뇌센 로다 송보데.
So then here all of those actions of the 7 actions, in other words 4 from the speech and 4 of the body, are the driving force for all of those actions are the 3 mental negative actions, which are this harsh, harmful thoughts, covetousness, and wrong views.
당가서 되는 도셔데 나센 세대 하모고 제가 편들 냐다서 되는 로면여도서 모쳐데 나센데리 토건서도 접변조도 대대 존나 상기 나센 쇼치 몰려야 되니 파셔들 내버지야. 아니 텔라 때문에 얘네 다 로다도 그런 간에 있는 미시마도 나센 코로 불이비 진치라 진세에 가래네 지고에 말에 제자로 나외 야나 당년다 뭐에 야나 가래나 뭐에 나센 용이 연구도.
So this covetousness is one of the driving force for giving rise to all these negative thoughts and negative actions, because it is due to this covetousness enables one to engage in negative actions of stealing and to extortion and so on and so forth, are all driven by this covetousness.
인트리기 메게 지본게 추추송에 메달라 아니 다 파쇼네 춘네바시가 용메시어 말이마도 라니기 파치 쥐안제네 춘네바싱에 세대 페이지 메시도.
So such individual who is able to observe 10 ethical disciplines purely, and such individual will never harm anyone, either bodily, or either through body, speech, or mind. And of course, there's a possibility that the individual may get harm from others, in fact, harm upon us by others. But he or she who is actually observing such ethical discipline will never engage in actions that are harmful to others.
나 된지기 메게와 주보텔 쇼등이기 저랑이 도보인들의 저랑이나 된지를 메게 넣게 투사 말에 도쇼모는 산나도나 님이 텔레도 메베 소리지로 아는 미지기 넣게 메킹에 차로.
So if you're unable to engage in such ethical disciplines, unable to observe the pure ethical disciplines, then think about the opposite of the 10 virtuous actions. If one is more acquaintance with the opposite of the 10 virtuous actions, then think about that. Who is going to trust us? Do you really think that we are really a trustworthy person? Because someone who is really doing something that is opposite of the 10 virtuous actions.
다들 저와 심마 편철라다 님이 여바데 쓰고 세장체. 아니 센데야 메지 로게 메투기 메지 차와이나. 다들 응네 지 동행이 라진데 지로 소소소 동행 좀비 소리 지로.
So such individual will not only undergo suffering of this life, not being trusted by others, and considering oneself by others, the way the others look at us as not a trustworthy person. And not only that, but also one is actually accumulating a cause for falling into a loreums in our future life.
네. 당가서 개개인적인 가족이 자이라면서 하늘의 개개인적인 때님이래다서 저저다 가족이 때래 님이다는 소소들의 죄도나 소소 개선열에 손세 되리다.
So this is how our great teachers, or the once root teachers, have actually identified as a negative deeds by pointing each of those negative deeds and must not engage in such actions. So therefore, we as their followers, we should try our best to refrain oneself from engaging in such actions.
된적이 추출도 손나 평야 가루 열었잖아. 아니 평야네 손도
So
마시 봤다.
now the next it talks about by safeguarding our ethical disciplines, by observing ethical disciplines, what is the benefits that we may gain out of it? Here it talks about with respect to the benefits of the safeguarding your ethical discipline.
평야네 사 마야시 진제 바데 버송바네 데니레 파시드바 인지로 라제 가주 미용셔다 덴초 론초 하이 핀송초 수춘 진중 지신와 자체 상제주나 델레중아 또 제송 제당스 대인 제식 차도 오는도 네 제르말로샤 동부티 로조지다.
So then here it says, with respect to the benefits of the safeguarding your ethical discipline, they are explained earlier and as set forth by the glorious Ayasura is in compendium of the perfections. The divine substances, the resources of human in which to delight, and the supreme blessed and the supreme test, which are the wonders of the deities. Does anything more marvelous come from the ethical discipline? Even the Buddhas and the teachings arise from it.
알렌 되게 세기 되면 되게 뭐만 되게 시작했어. 되게 세기인데 지다 되래. 맞아 가서 뭐티 전에 수준 내지면서 다 뭐도 하다 미 고pon다 네 대화도 로초도 론쇼다 라이 가델로서 피순 줘봐 수준 되는 시험하다 레다 대랑 와서 체 가려요. 대라라기 상제지 고pon야 수준 소화를 된 정거래서 된 로디 되래시.
So here now it says, it's clearly mentioned that by means of engaging in ethical discipline, the divine substance, it says, the resources of human in which to delight, and the supreme place and the supreme test, which are the wonders of the deities. And does anything more marvelous come from ethical disciplines? So even the Buddhas and the teachings arises from it. So our very attainment of our state of enlightenment is also coming into being due to the observation of pure ethical discipline.
근데 오이 지기 오는도 제단체 제한 될라 때네 주 권에 건데 체받은 로다 희징감지 세바 첨부 나당 로버 총번 조하다 년수지 사변 통지 방비 이시 점마 터바다 예전에 하장 쉬어바다 하장 gembal라 따나 샤신에서 주베 문제장 추진지 전에 근전 바마 슬라 대양 탕치 가와지비 제지 초당 저 정보 제지 지쇼스 로양 지쇼 마이바 민로이 쇼레와 인라 추진지 잡이 전에 쇼 탕치도 로와다 사동 세비 젠데라 소비 대기 슈바네 라존라 가양 녀모비 사동 접비 슈바네 라존라 민가신 튠바다 로드숑이 따장 덴반자양 수진지 노다 덴반에 제레 피드숑한 저데 데니레 수진데네 체바 터빌랑 니징감진 나다 냥바두 이시 점마 퓨지 라신데 전제 젠드 주비 초제샤 컨송견의 영웅 저송데 로드숑다 민게 슈바이 차루 퇴양 수진 덴저나 미나나 데네 파번 주로 시당 손도 어텔렌세
Furthermore, in dependence on ethical discipline, your mind stem progressively develops. Your training becomes the same as that of the Mahasattva, Bodhisattvas, who have a compassionate nature, and you attain the pure sublime wisdom that eliminates all the seeds of the wrongdoings. When worldly ornaments adorn the very young or the very old, they make this person seems ridiculous and are therefore ugly. But not matter who has the ornament of ethical discipline, old, young or in between. It delights everyone. Thus it is the best of ornaments. The pleasant fragrance of ethical disciplines, the discipline's good name spreads in all directions, whereas other pleasant fragrance must follow the directions of the wind and are thus limited, right? A lotion scented of sandalwood, which relieves the torment of heat, is prohibited for the renunciates. But a lotion which protects against the torturous heat of the afflictions is not prohibited, and is appropriate for them. Someone who copies the outer appearance of being a renunciate, but who has the jewel of ethical discipline, is a superior to others. The compendium of the perfection says, ethical discipline is the path of spiritual attainment, achieving equality with those of compassionate nature, and has the highest nature of the pure sublime wisdom, free of flaws. It is called the best of ornaments. It is a pleasant fragrance throughout the three realms, and lotion not prohibited for a renunciate. Even those who copy appropriate etri, if they have ethical discipline, will be a superior to other human beings.
that's it. Sutrin dem mechina, tendere. Then Sutrin Rajila Dena, and Jukune compared the door, say there are Namnech. Sutrin Tabachi Sona, and Gandriji Jangi Sona, Toba Yansen and Joba Pier. Then the Shu Chamber Sarang, so Jenny Yale Majeremado, Matsundere, Jetta Mimes Zutom, that they get Sutrin and Chumatasa. Me mengeti yuzu tongu maros de na yi chuchi tembo che mewa ina ene yu ne lu kare na to tu mare so na
So here now, if one if one's mind stream is enriched by the practice of ethical disciplines, one's practice, in other words, one's spiritual practice will flourish furthermore. It will flourish, unlimited flourishment will take place. So if one's ethical discipline is pure, if one is able to observe the purity of one's ethical discipline, and it will then again become a flourishment of one's spiritual realizations. So just like it is just like someone who is blind cannot see any object, without a sight, they will not be able to see anything. Similarly, without observing pure ethical discipline, will not be able to see the actual reality.
Then Carlo was a taji, Jean said, Sutrin la tene ji kono competa dogore, sage, eh? Niji Mansi Jay Shanchu, Hoba Yamos, Zobi, Nishanchu Sambata Rani, Yanechipa Chaver, Hoba Tomba Chaver said, but say Tomboro.
So it is really, just think about, if one's practice of ethical discipline is very pure, due to the purity of one's ethical discipline, the practice of ethical discipline, one's practice will that of equal with the practice of the Mahabodhisattvas.
Any Shetamato singing Tajitare, any G Taswana, any G Tasona, any Melotasona Sonia Mashana Desakono Yamaro.
So just like it is, then also it actually purifies our mind stream. In other words, our continuum. It will purify our continuum. So when you are able to purify your continuum, you're able to see the reality. Just like if mirrors, if the mirror is very pure, it is cleansed and very pure. So the reflection, whatever the reflection which is in the direction of that mirror can be reflected in the mirror very clearly.
되지. 얘네 가서 잠을 내 당으로 다 같이 gen차 잡아다 다는 gen차 이제 소소 다시는 제보면 같이 배팅 걸로 제거해요. 아니 gem바기 다 gem바기 다 해서 배팅 여러. 얘는 추천이 gen다 dem바 진소는 몇대 라시지 유동화 통해지지 추천이 연된라 때네. gen생에 되면 파쇼 gen다 지 유동화 통해 단달 gen다고 여러. 됐다고 말해서 추천 dem비 강사 gen에서 메시지 통나 아니 샴비장제의 이동화지 통거래.
So here now, when it comes to the ordinary ornaments that if you wear those ordinary ornaments, and there is a way in which the ornament that can be worn in terms of suitability of oneself. Sometimes if you buy ornaments, regardless of the monetary value of that ornament, but that ornament is not suitable for oneself, then even though that you wear this ornament, it doesn't make much difference. In fact, it doesn't look very good on you. And so when it comes to the ornaments, the ethical discipline, ornament of ethical discipline, it doesn't matter whether we are young or old or middle-aged, wherever, this ornament is suited to all, which is the mind-captivated ornament for all beings.
당가서 저선보세 다래 저선보 용배 된다라 롱 상쇼네 저거에서는 저마트 상쇼네 샤쇼 대로에나 저마트 상쇼를 저거 말어 롱 샤쇼도 파져도에나 롱 가쇼이 제를 저거를 말도 아니 저마테 니 전용을 쳐두고 말해서 수준지 저마테 롱을 떼고 말해 아니 집에 담아 저기 수준도 되면 집에 담아 강해요나 아니 파지 쳐도 그래서.
So similarly, if you wear a perfume, a really wonderful perfume, a very expensive perfume, but that's the fragrance of the perfume can be smelled by the people who are nearby oneself, or it goes direction of where the actual wind blows, right? The wind is blowing from the north, from the west, in other words, and then the fragrance will go towards the east. And it will not become a pervasive to all the place where you are actually staying. But if you're wearing a fragrance, the wonderful fragrance of the ethical disciplines, it doesn't require any winds to blow the fragrance that is to be experienced by others, but it will be so pervasive to wherever the person who is wearing this an ornament of ethical discipline.
던저 추천이 조막하게 겐들 여러서는 어떤 로지쇼에 가시다 던저다 아차다면서도 배제 최소지 자사자 많이 거는세 롱바이단 던저다 대사 아차다면시는 간제 뭐네 지 장신이 저선 좀 강해다 좀 담바야 카운트가 되는 이마 창쇼는 게 들려라 이게 아크데여서 이마 전샤노는 좀 먼저지 자체적하여 맞대 저tren에서 넣으면 내가 좀 용다리 ngaso akologra akino ndo de toma simbozi kagre senende ba lomba kono yodare ta ti toma de tandar nga sona ndo jindu da de toma re se sona mindu dese ngaso shinju yabo majer ma do chuting toma yinsaro.
So fragrance of smelling the fragrance of ethical discipline is something very common in the monastic communities. Or we have a saying that there who are actually observing purity of their ethical discipline will have a very sweet fragrance from that individual. For instance, I have experienced myself in one of my uncle who was always maintaining a retreat for his entire life. So we really remember smelling such a fragrance of wonderful, when we enter into his chamber and his meditation place, the place where he is meditating, it's it's so we can experience this fragrance from coming out of the person. So it is something really true. It really happens. If you are able to observe those ethical disciplines, then the fragrance of ethical discipline will be there.
되지. 근데 라바도 가서 데도 차동시 젠데 저데 제다 시바기 콘로미도 저래서 뭐 뭐지 가서 제다 러저게 튕인데 가르제 제다 튕와 제다네서 또 뭐지 그 라신지 제바는 게고 인터넷 된지기 젠다 따주고 말 수직이 젠데 네 러저랑 해봐도 고야 천지에다 그 유행되기 전에 인자데 가서 코로나 안에 제조 인자데 된지게 말에 뭐 강가 이동안 통해 다 상세 주부담부터 가게래도 주부담바 쇼사 컨트롤 강사를 해도 샘플을 대는 제거를 넣어도 다 데려와 가서 대화도 집어용해서 메들 가오체죠.
So the perfume such as made out of sandalwood and the ornaments of like rosaries or the kind of rosary that's considered to be ornaments, and any kind of ornaments are prohibited for the renunciates. In other words, the monks and nuns, or the novice, or the fully ordained monks. But the fragrance of this ethical discipline is required for all of those. It is in fact required for the renunciates. And so therefore we have a saying that wherever those noble beings are, or the sublime beings are, Kevudamba, or the sublime beings, wherever the sublime beings are present, the fragrance of ethical discipline is present. So therefore, it is not only the fragrance, but the individual who are in their surroundings receives, experience such a happiness, such extraordinary happiness can be experienced at the very sight of that, sublime beings.
지다 로션기 따장쟁이 지바에나야 수준제 나다 되게데 이제는 피도 쳐버렸어요. 단진도는 먼저 방아족이 이제는 문에 바토본의 진지해지어로 그래서 또 수준이 되려도
So it is the qualities of it really depends on the qualities of one's ethical disciplines. Although that the individuals, the monks and nuns who may have a similar dress, wearing a renunciates, robes and so on and so forth. But given the quality of the ethical discipline, the purity of the ethical disciplines, and their appearance, the very appearance will be very different. There will be very different appearance when you look at them. And although that you may see that all of them are wearing the same robes, but then the very presence of that someone who is observing the pure ethical disciplines will give you a very extraordinary experiences by being a presence of this individual.
내가 저 러시아에 대코노라는 건 제제마도 몇개 주보기 추진돼서 아니 세대 상식이 라시전에 대해서나 아니 제다면하게 제가 다른 데는 손바 나기지 최초의 라니를 조퇴해지지 내 야슈지 강제 도바 제가 계속 기르면도
So it's not only right now I'm just taking example of renunciates, but it is not only for the renunciates, even the individual who is actually observing 10 virtue sections and who is actually engaging in the practice of abstention from 10 non-virtue sections will have these experiences, will have such realizations. But then all our observation of the 10 virtue sections must be on the basis of cultivation of love and sense of caring for others.
되지. 제양서도 장서기 취 마주에 진상 배전지 체제 마주장 년화고의 롱셔 관계 종화당 도와당 자비레지 디바 매장 조견 되바당 장게냐라 소비 리스 메스 메바당 하페 마다바당 뭐 미시비 조나자 관계 상바당 Gambi Jiji Sadi Yang, Hada Mena Ju Shu Du Jin, Taba Na, Chubi Xin Du Chewa Xibi, Pena Na, Shutin Le Xiong De, Deni Le Sondu.
So then here it says, furthermore, other benefit arises from ethical disciplines. Although you do not speak flattering words and do not strive with great effort and hardships, you naturally gather immediately necessary resources, even without without a threat of force. All beings pay homage to you. There's no causal talk. So there's no casual talk about the lineage of your relatives, etc. People who previously did not know you or help you are naturally kind to you. And deities and humans serve the dust of your footprints and carry away what they can get as an object of worship. The compendium of the perfection states.
De Peyin do Kawa Jedua, Matsuki Pena Rajon Segura, Takani Chuchi Runge Jensona, Lonshu Hanging Wood, so at the Tere. Any Matsu Jambi said the Chi Jambotan, any Casa the Shono singing, the Ripanjambo Jena, Besan Jena, any Dumugo Jena, any Lonshola Soba, any Bemen Region Hangi Dio and Younger Sonda, Children Pisos of a song at Della.
So if one is a pure practitioner, particularly of observing the pure ethical disciplines on the basis of cultivation of love and compassion, then other resources, the material resources, will be accomplished as byproduct. So it doesn't require hardships or the efforts to acquire such resources.
Tell him to gain out of the song. And then Garza, and then you change. Chuyin Jena Chajin Basin, the Songoras, and she better than Somba Nagi, Yaneti Jedani, G. Togola Soba Tagi, Junior Pongo Madison, Jubitama Sonjindo, Chuyin Siena Chajin Base.
So if you really follow as it is it teaches in the Dharma, then you will never be deprived of resources. That is what is said by one of my teacher, again Lam Rim.
아니 다다가 선제기 신카데 세문고는 따고야지 저는 이 로저 미지시고 말했어야 돼. 아니 수춘송에게 대인지로 제부
이게 rumje 손나 투지다 rumje 투지가 연계 손난다.
단다 선제기 아니 가족이 변는 점을링거 신카데 라비 세문고는 따여기 뒤세지 조나야 니 로도 시원나 아니 미지시고 말했어야 또고 공고 말했어야 돼. 다 수춘이 표현이 자는 인지로 와. 수춘 표현을 권는 인지로 와.
So the Buddha has also stated that even the world is deprived of the resources, such as not even having a land to plant their crops. The size of the land, become a size of the thumbnail. But so long as the renunciates are concerned, they will never be deprived of the resources.
Tani bada trapileji department joking to say the any touch department on joking to say the any sutree someone in it the chuncha the dealer so about the logo cake go mare Ranshinje Rani on the deal was so about string pair.
So if you look at the benefits of that ethical discipline, it says it doesn't require any weapons or anything to destroy the foes. It doesn't require, as long as you have a pure ethical disciplines, and it is authentic, weapons and so on to destroy the foe.
Rangi Niela so Pinjala so by you go Mama said the Pema Taki Yinaya, and it Hodika Tonsonaya, and it's Shambatan Sevayi, you saw sort of code so many there.
So you will be loved and worshipped and revered by all other beings, even though that person whom you may not have any connections not relatives and so forth. But as soon as they see you, it is due to the authenticity of observation of your ethical discipline, you will be worshipped and revered by other beings, respected by other beings.
자 추천 비서 좀 되게 유튜브 담바 강의 쇼사기 셔자사다서는 맞아 변은 로방이래. 근데 내가 전부 던저기 아니 사다는 막 크네. 아니 될라니 대바지에서 제가 아니 지 소속이 아니 지다 가리나 배제던 거를 하나 변화 소속이 지 근데 캔 다 이제 되게 쉬었던 시간에 콤바사바 저와도 우리 저와도 손 던저를 내가 전부 소속 구속 되었다는 표현이 되게 소주비었다는 제거래. 아니 주부 담보 강도 자세히 셔기 뒤대야 하던 문화지 샤시 주비지에서 로를 송도와.
So here it says now very clearly mentioned that deities and the humans revere the dust of your footprints, and carry away that they can get as an object of worship. So this is we have a tradition of doing that. We collect dust when we are visiting a very holy place, a very sacred place, and we collect the dust because it is a worthy of worship. It can be worshipped, and we collect. If you know that someone who actually took a step on that particular place, and we try to collect the dust of the footprint of that individual, and we carry that and put it even on our altar, and putting this into the innermost treasure, keep as the innermost treasure to build the stupas, and all we're installing into the new statues and so forth.
되게 추이도 로다는 자기 내가 이제 저사에서 데니레스는 파시디발레지 치도 맞제 치스 맞제 장 녀수 거의 논시 린로도 디바메 번지 때균 뒤때 세메 맞제 온슈 터번죠 저바 레마데 저도 마에 리스 중앙다 펜시 연바 강양 마제시 혼치 미시주 탐지장 추진 대비 조 대란뒤 강배 자시 주비 뒤 다장 시주 담벌란신 하당미 샤체 고디레 샤체 고디 토박견도 체 대시 추진 담대 리초 인시에서 손도 대바도 놓으셔라 제네 자
So now here it says the compendium of the perfection states, even without speaking or undertaking hardship, you gather immediate necessities and service. Without threat, all the world pays homage to you, and you obtain power effortlessly and without toil. You are among those about whom it is improper to talk casually. Even all persons who you did not know previously, who have not helped you or done what you need, pay homage to you. A person with ethical discipline. It says, excellent beings revere and the dust blessed by your feet, touching their heads to it. Deities and humans bow down to it and place it on the crown of their heads and carry away what they can get. Therefore, one who has ethical discipline is in the supreme lineage.
对，他想去身边，当俺就想去，一动员想去身边当把的种，你一动员假设就学罢了，最近的老呢，你让些生产当起，你送去交多就像一公公牛你都他把呢，你即将呢俺让给几个人，你现在把呢，那学边呢，马上当结帮那的，现在老多数三年呢，我的朋友你个接了去。
So let's do the dedications by following the practice of the Bodhisattvas and engaging in the practice of the Bodhisattvas and observing the Bodhisattvas vows. May myself and all other sentient beings to establish in the state of the unity of Vajradhara. And may all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas please bless me to be able to do this.
罗根居尼萨比给我的电动着我跟了高边东，切不就尊罗桑着我一，定比尼波人多赛季修萨吉，若就没多长，这着那些年的肩膀的。当觉人多明的被我，若干那道心那修不修，叫我更多样到那么，人民求救别让龙须进，撒当狼藉原本老早，多久将给国王牛多修，也当不着，明日那么那样到要命。天天人都别来做年，看到阳光刚是早晚的，农民忙的开动着我呢，南镇家业王八大酒鸡，两毛顺便塞了更多样。江边养猪，这边结种呢，天边人把耕草能结出，年年周边接能年新收，让给基金多边能结呢，修着这边长远到天间，若月运气明报谁先呢？家业担保有人先救急，担保着钱出给马家帮。悄悄娘婆举杯说的呢，年纪轻个一绕就把眼，偏偏爹爹在我小把手，最近教育没用听的呢，列着上就浪就人别讲，他的浪就也浪别的心，教育在我人多讲究精。朗诵主编定前主席经，夜间随节门当明明根，接到更多家业好多年，朗到朗动着我梦就急，刚才贴吧出了去学经，最近住了珍宝地边塞，土地那就到处主席经。抓些将此手，绕就见，就在那面过菜绕点见，那个真的就觉结巴当，路上点别正面扫送，若也面色大度念就急，看着让人过于心高速，偏当的我忙的就别。今日在我边人要作业，要别身体不练就筋，将别抱怨接到金宝东，更多上不天阳地见的，得到根据就是到如今，给我得到当街绕多梦，就从西边叫我当街。我刚了就多广播的，大金给月早晚就给讲，从不休息绕多我。哎呀，多谢，thank you。